Hey YouTube, this is a video I've wanted to do for a while now regarding buying a used microsprint. Before I bought mine, I realized there's really no information at all on what to look for. I just want this to be the go-to for people getting into the sport so they aren't hit with the same expensive repair costs like I was. A cheaper car up front isn't always going to be the cheaper car in the long run. I'm going to take you through the checking out the roller first, then the fuel system, and the engine last. If this video helps you, please hit that like and subscribe button. Starting with the front of the car, we're going to look at the frame itself, checking for any major dents, stings, cracks. The front bumper is a cheap part, but sometimes after getting kinked from an accident, they are tough to remove from the frame. We're going to check the front shocks, looking to make sure the shock shafts aren't bent and the shock bodies aren't dented. You can push down on the front bumper to make sure there's no binding. Also check for any oil leaking or seeping around the seals. On a coilover car, the spring will be over the shock. Just check for any obvious damage. On a 4-bar car like this one, look for any bends in the torsion arms. Take a quick look at the torsion stops. They are aluminum, so they strip out. Sometimes people will put a nut on the bottom as well as the top if this piece is stripped out for an adjustment. Where it clamps onto the torsion bar, they'll run a longer bolt through, lock it down that way. These cars have solid front axles, so you want to make sure the axle itself isn't bent, as well as where the shock and radius rods mount. The radius rods are most likely aluminum, so check for the rods being bent, as well as the rod ends. Make sure the rods move freely and aren't binding. Same on the left side. The tie rod is the longest bar in the car, so check for any damage to it, any bends. If the car you're looking at has a left front brake, just look for any fluid seeping around the fittings or pistons, or any bent or kink brake fittings or lines. While I'm right here, make sure that the bolts for the steering are tight. When I got this car, they were loose, and the steering arm bolt uh, had worn into an oval before I bought it. Take a peek at the front knuckles. Make sure there's no damage, excessive wear. If you do have a jack, you can pick it up and shake it. When you shake the wheels and tires, just make sure there's not a ton of play there either. Next, you're going to want to check the steering system. An RTS chassis like this will have the steering box mounted directly onto the frame. Hyper chassis, you'll see an axle mounted steering box. In either case, make sure the bolts for mounting are tight and there isn't excessive play in the box. By wiggling the steering wheel, it should feel pretty tight. If you're looking at a car with power steering, make sure it operates correctly and none of the wiring will get caught in the steering shaft. If it does have power steering, you're going to have a motor right here to the right of the steering wheel. The last thing to check on the front of the vehicle is the wheels and tires. If you brought a jack with you, you can spin the front wheels and shake them, checking for any bad bearings or loose bearings. You're going to check the wheels for any dents or dings where air could leak and throw the balance off. As for the tires, just check how much tread is left. At this time, front tires are around $170 a piece. So keep that in mind if they're worn out. We're going to move to the center of the car now. First, just check for any major damage to the body, any big dents in the right and left nerf bars. Checking the frame the whole time as well. If you're looking at a car that has a bar to protect the fuel injection, check that too. Make sure it's not too banged up. Moving to the cockpit. Again, just checking the frame. for damage or cracks. It is tight, but you can look to see if the car has adjustable pedals or not. Mine doesn't, but you'll see a lot of the new cars do. Moving along the frame, you'll see the brake bias adjuster. Just make sure that's not leaking any fluid. The seats in the micro are measured at your thigh waist area. So keep in mind that there's a good chance that this seat isn't going to fit you. New seats are around $700 to $1,000, but there's a ton of decent seats on Facebook Marketplace for cheaper. While looking at the seat, make sure that the seat belts are in date. If not, that's going to be another little cost for you. Check your local track rules, as some tracks require halo bars. If the car doesn't have one, that might be something you need to add. They do make bolt-in ones. We're going to add the radiator to the center of the car here. Let's check the condition. I personally run a mesh screen that I made to catch the dirt and rocks that fly up. Ends up catching a lot of big debris. Here's a radiator that was in the car when I first bought it. There's some pretty gnarly dents there. So a cheap little mesh screen can go a long way in saving you from buying a new radiator. Onto the rear of the car. Again, the same things as the front. Check the radius rods, make sure they aren't bent or frozen. Brake floater should be steel, so just check for that. This is a Z-Link car, so I'm only going to have one radius rod that mounts to the bird cage, where a wishbone car will have the same single mounting point up front, but will mount to the top and bottom of the bird cage. Pretty much any cars newer than 2015 will be a wishbone car. Check the rear shocks, bent shafts, dented shock bodies, same as the front. All these cars are going to have a torsion bar rear suspension, so check for any binding or bent arms. You can push down on the rear Nerf bar and make sure there's no binding. Look at the bird cages for any apparent damage. Check the right radius rod or wishbone. The rear axle comes in 1 3/4 or 2-inch. This is a 2-inch. It's going to be a little stronger, but also a little heavier. Make sure it's not bent or showing any signs of rubbing on any other components. The W links here, they tend to bend pretty easy. You're going to want to just grab it. Make sure it wiggles freely. The rear brake is a lot easier to see than the front. Check the brake lining and fittings for any damage, and the lines for any kinks or binding. Check the sprocket for any wear, any damage. Make sure it lines up with the front sprocket. Also check the chain guide and rollers for excessive wear. Look at the rear bumper. Make sure it's not pushed into the tail tank or any other major dents or damage. Wheels and tires for the rear. Most of them are going to have a bead lock like this. The right rear is going to be a standard size, and the stagger will be adjusted by changing the size of the left rear tire. Check your local track rules for what tires you're allowed to run. If the car you're buying has American Racer tires on it and the track requires Hoosiers, you're going to be in for an $800 to $900 bill. They might also have a rule for compound. So check if they run a spec tire. If the right rear on the car is a soft compound like an RD12, you're going to need to replace that. So keep that in mind, that the tires might look new, but you might not be able to run them. The second most expensive part on the car next to the engine is going to be the tail tank. You're going to check the shell mounting points for damage and the shell itself for any cracks or dents. The bladder inside is what normally goes bad. If the seat isn't in the car, you can bring an Allen key set with you and pop this cover off. Behind it, we'll have the manufacturing date. Saldana says the bladder is normally good for 5 to 6 years on average, so keep that in mind. If the seat is in the car, it's not the end of the world. In either case, you're going to want to take the tank cap off and inspect the inside of the bladder for any dry rotting. This get it to focus here. This tank and bladder is pretty new, only a year old, so it still looks pliable and no damage to it. Here's a bad bladder out of the tank. You can see here the manufacturing date, September of 2016, so it's almost a decade old at this point. We'll take a look inside. You can see it's completely coming apart around the outlet port. The right side here has some delaminating as well. In a pinch, Saldana told me you can use Permatex Ultra Black as a band-aid to nurse it along, but if you have something similar to this, I'd say this bladder is beyond repair. Coming off the tank, you're going to be going into a filter and then to the fuel pump. Check for any damage to either part. Some tracks will require a fuel shutoff valve, so Hyper makes a slick filter with the shutoff integrated into it. Out of the pump, you're going to run to a second filter and then to your fuel injection. Just look for any kinks in the line or any place the hose could be rubbing on. Out of the injection, you're going to be running to a regulator and then back to the tank. Just look to make sure the regulator is mounted tight on the frame. We've reached the engine and injection setup. Check the injection for any bends that could let dirt past the filter and into the engine. Also check for a clean filter. The filter should be cleaned every race or two, so a dirty filter could clue you in that other maintenance wasn't performed either, such as cleaning the fuel filters. Alcohol is corrosive and the fuel sitting in the lines could cause injectors to stick. So ask if the injection has been sent out for cleaning or if they at least flushed it out. If you're buying a car during the race season, this doesn't really apply as the car is being raced every week. Check the wiring harness and ECU for any damage, frayed wires, insulation rubbed off. As far as data acquisition, this has a Micron 5. That does the water temp, RPMs, voltage, and then I have a mechanical oil pressure gauge. Gould sells a Widify unit that also does oxygen sensor output, fuel pressure, and other inputs from the ECU. There's nothing wrong with a car that just has mechanical gauges, but keep in mind the cost of each system when buying the car. Check the exhaust out for any kinks, big dents, damage. At this time, we can also check the radiator hoses. They're a little tight to see. We can pop off some body panels, check off the inside here. There is a kick panel here for your leg that's also going to need to be removed to check the oil level, at least on the Yamahas. When looking at the engine, the questions you ask are just as important as going over the engine in person. Knowing who the engine builder was and how many races are on the engine can give you an idea of how long you have before the next rebuild. You're normally looking at between 25 to 35 races between builds. The oil should be changed every 3 to 4 races, so ask if they wrote down any records as well as any receipts from the engine build that could help you. Look at the engine condition, checking gasket areas for leaks. You can check the oil level too, make sure that's clean and full. We can check the other half of the engine here. Again, just like checking gaskets, looking for leaks, making sure there's no bends. The last thing we're going to talk about is doing a compression test. This might be one of the first things you want to do, because if the engine doesn't have any compression, you probably don't want to buy the car. They're super easy to do on these. Just pop the plug off, pop the ignition coil out, and that'll gain you access to the spark plug holes. These engines, you're going to want to see probably at least 160 psi across the board. If you do come across one of the cylinders that only has 70 or 80, keep in mind that engine's going to need to be rebuilt or replaced. Well, guys, if you made it this far, I appreciate you sticking around. Hopefully you learned something on what to look for when purchasing a micro sprint. I'm sure I forgot a few things, so just keep reading the comments for what other people have to say to check out. With race season just around the corner, I hope I see everybody out at the track, and good luck out there, guys.